The rain that night fell endlessly, drumming softly against the silent streets, turning reflections of city lights into trembling pools of gold. The air was cold enough to sting, but gentle enough to remind anyone still awake that they were alive. Most hurried by with heads down, chasing the comfort of walls and warmth. But one woman did not rush. She slowed her steps, her umbrella trembling above her, her heart tugged by something unseen. A man sat alone beneath the awning of an old bus stop, wrapped in a thin, soaked blanket. His face was tired, his hands rough and cracked, yet his eyes held something quiet, not despair, but a strange kind of peace, like someone who had already lost everything and learned to live with it. She hesitated. The world had taught her to look away, to be careful, to not invite strangers close. But something deep inside her refused the logic of fear. She walked closer, her voice soft against the rain. She asked if he was all right. He said he was fine, though his trembling betrayed him. And she knew he was not. Without another word, she held out her umbrella, her grocery bag hanging at her side, and said that she had a small room, nothing fancy, but dry and warm. At first, he refused. People like him were used to being turned away, not welcomed in. But she insisted. And eventually, he followed her, two silhouettes beneath one fragile umbrella, walking through the storm together. Her home was small, full of the scent of tea and the warmth of quietness. A place that felt lived in, honest. She showed him to the guest room, laid out a towel, a blanket, and said good night with a smile that reached her eyes. He thanked her, his voice trembling, unsure how to accept something so simple as kindness. That night, he didn't sleep much. He stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain against the window, and wondered how a stranger could show more compassion than all the people he had once called friends. In the morning, she found him already awake, making coffee in her kitchen. He had washed the dishes from the night before and fixed the loose handle on a cabinet. He greeted her with a quiet smile, and for the first time in a long while, she smiled back without hesitation. What began as one night turned into two, then three, and soon it was simply normal that he was there. He helped around the house, repaired what was broken, walked with her to the market, and listened when she spoke. He rarely spoke about himself, and she didn't press. There was a serenity in their silence, a shared understanding between two people who had been hurt in different ways. Every evening, they ate together by the small wooden table. She told stories about her late mother, about the people she helped at the community shelter. He listened carefully, nodding, eyes softening with every word. One evening, she invited him to join her at the shelter. He hesitated, but went. There, surrounded by people who had nothing, he found something he didn't know he'd lost: purpose. He served meals, carried boxes, listened to laughter and pain. It humbled him. It healed him. That night, as they walked home under the dim streetlights, he said quietly, "I used to think success was measured by how much you could keep. Now I see it's about how much you can give." From then on, something invisible began to grow between them. Not romance, not yet, but recognition. Two lives, each carrying their share of loneliness, finding rhythm in one another's company. He started smiling more. He fixed things she didn't even know were broken. She started cooking for two without realizing it. The house, once filled only with the ticking of clocks, now held laughter, the soft murmur of shared mornings. But even in peace, the past finds its way back. One gray afternoon, a black SUV parked quietly across the street. Two men in suits waited inside, scanning the neighborhood. Inside the house, she was folding laundry when a knock echoed at the door. When she opened it, the air changed. One of the men spoke his name, Daniel Carter. The sound froze her. She turned to the man she thought she knew. His face fell, the quiet truth unraveling in silence. He didn't deny it. He couldn't. He had been living as no one, but he had once been someone. A billionaire, a CEO, a man who had built empires and lost himself in them. He had walked away from everything to see if humanity still existed without his name. And she, unknowingly, had proven that it did. But truth, even when noble, carries weight. She stood still, torn between disbelief and hurt. The man she had welcomed as lost was the same man whose world she had never imagined touching. The distance between them, once invisible, now felt endless. That night, he left quietly. No words. Only a note on the kitchen table that read, "Thank you for reminding me that I am still human." Time moved slowly after that. Her house felt emptier, quieter. She continued her routines, work, the shelter, the endless rhythm of days, but something inside her had shifted. She had not lost faith in kindness, but she had learned how fragile it could feel when trust was broken. Then, one morning months later, while cleaning the shelter's common room, she saw his face again, not in person, but on a small TV in the corner. He was standing at a podium, older, steadier, speaking about something called the True North Foundation. He talked about homelessness, redemption, forgiveness. He spoke about a stranger who opened her door without knowing who he was. He said that one act of compassion had restored his faith in the world. He didn't name her, but he didn't have to. She knew. Tears welled in her eyes. For the first time in months, she smiled, not with pride, but with peace. Days later, an envelope arrived at her door. Inside, a handwritten note. For the woman who offered warmth when I was cold. The first shelter of our foundation will carry your mother's name. I hope you'll help me build it. She did. When she arrived at the site, he was there. No suits, no cameras, just Daniel, sleeves rolled up, helping paint the walls. The air between them was different now, calm and open. He looked up as she approached, his expression one of quiet gratitude. They didn't need to speak about forgiveness. It was already alive in the way they worked together, rebuilding not just walls but trust. The foundation grew. It became a home for hundreds. People found safety, jobs, and dignity again. And within its walls, two people who had once been strangers found a different kind of love, not the kind that burns, but the kind that stays. Years passed. The world changed, the foundation expanded, but their bond remained simple. They lived humbly, surrounded by laughter and the constant reminder that kindness multiplies. When journalists tried to tell their story, they both declined. He always said, "This isn't about me. It's about what love can rebuild when given freely." And she always said, "Kindness only matters when no one's watching." As the years folded into each other, Daniel grew older. His hair turned silver, his steps slower, but his eyes still held the same calm she had seen that rainy night. He spent his mornings at the shelter garden, watching children play, listening to the soft hum of life continuing. Sometimes he would look at an old photograph framed on his desk, two blurred figures walking under a single umbrella in the rain. No one else knew who they were. But he did, and that was enough. On his final evening, rain returned once more. He sat by the window, watching droplets trace paths down the glass. She was there, beside him, their hands resting together in quiet understanding. He turned to her and said, "Do you remember the rain?" She smiled. "I never forgot." He nodded softly, the corners of his lips lifting. "Good. Because that's where I found my way home." Outside, the rain fell gently, washing the city clean, carrying whispers of forgiveness across the streets. And though time moved on, their story remained, not as legend, not as tragedy, but as proof that even one act of pure kindness can alter the course of a life forever. Because love is not always found in grand moments. Sometimes it begins quietly, with a stranger in the rain, a door left open, and a heart brave enough to say yes. And in that small yes, the world begins again. After Daniel was gone, the world seemed quieter. The rooms of the foundation still carried his presence, not in photographs or portraits, but in the gentle order of things he once touched. His desk, still neat. The old coat he refused to replace, hanging by the door. The garden he planted, now overflowing with green. She walked through those hallways every morning, just as they used to, her footsteps echoing softly through spaces once filled with his laughter. People still came, every day, seeking warmth, food, or simply someone to listen. And every time she greeted them, she felt him there, not as a memory, but as a presence that lived through every act of kindness. The foundation grew larger than either of them had ever dreamed. Donations came from across the world, volunteers multiplied, and a new generation carried forward what had begun as a single night of compassion. But for her, it was never about numbers. It was about faces, one by one, story by story. Sometimes she would pause at the window and watch the rain fall, remembering the night that changed everything. She would smile faintly and whisper to herself, "You found your peace, and I found mine." And deep inside, she knew that love, real love, never truly leaves. It simply transforms, finding new ways to exist through the hands of those still living. It wasn't until months later that she found it, a sealed envelope tucked away inside a drawer of the old wooden desk they once shared. The handwriting was unmistakable. She sat down before opening it, her fingers trembling slightly, unsure if her heart was ready for his words. The letter began simply. "If you're reading this, it means time has done what it always does. It has taken me forward, and left you with the most precious task, to continue." He wrote of gratitude, not for the shelter, not for forgiveness, but for the courage she showed when he was at his weakest. He confessed that he had once believed redemption was earned through action, but she had taught him that it began with grace. "You showed me," he wrote, "that forgiveness is not the absence of pain, but the decision to live with it differently. I thought I came to you searching for love, but now I know I was searching for peace. You gave me both." By the time she finished reading, tears blurred the ink. Yet she didn't cry out of sorrow. It was something gentler, the ache of closure, the tenderness of having been part of something rare and whole. She folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the drawer, whispering, "Thank you for finding me in the rain." Outside, thunder rumbled far away, not harsh, but soft, like an echo of a promise kept. Years turned quietly into decades. The foundation became a landmark, a symbol of compassion that outlived its founders. Schools were built, shelters opened across cities and countries, all carrying the same simple name, True North. Visitors would often stop by the main building, where a mural stretched across the front wall. It showed two figures beneath a single umbrella, walking through a storm, their faces blurred, their steps aligned. Below it, a single phrase was written. "Kindness is the light that never dies in the rain." Children played under that mural, volunteers passed by, and life moved forward in the rhythm of laughter and hope. The woman, now older, walked slower but with the same spark in her eyes. Every drop of rain reminded her of that night, the beginning, the storm, the choice to stop instead of walk away. One evening, as another storm rolled through, she stood beneath the overhang of the shelter, watching the city shimmer with wet reflections. A young volunteer came up beside her and said, "They say this place started because of a miracle. Do you believe that?" She smiled. "No," she said softly. "It started because someone cared." The rain kept falling, cleansing the streets, soaking the earth, and carrying whispers of every life that had been touched since that single act of courage years ago. And in the reflection of a puddle near her feet, two blurred shapes seemed to walk once more. One woman, one man, side by side beneath a small umbrella, the memory of a night when love, disguised as kindness, changed the world forever.